So far, we have implemented authentication and authorization successfully. Now let's take this application to the next level. Let's imagine certain operations, such as deleting data, can only be performed by admins. So let me show you how to implement role-based authorization. First, we need to go to our user model. So this is our user schema. Currently, we have three properties: name, email, and password. Now we need to add another property to see if a given user is an admin or not. So let's add a new property, is admin of type Boolean. So that's the first step. Now I'm going to go in MongoDB Compass, grab one of these users and make them an admin. So edit, I'm going to add a field after password. And the order doesn't really matter. So is admin, and by default, you can see the type of this is string. We're going to change that to Boolean. So let's set this to true. And then finally, apply the update. So here I have a user that is an admin. Now, when they log in, I want to include this property in our JSON Web Token payload. So next time they send this JSON Web Token to the server, we can extract this property directly from the token. We don't have to get the ID, go in the database, and see if they're admin or not. And again, as I told you before, with a digital signature included in a JSON Web Token, a malicious user cannot change the value of is admin for their user account. If they make any changes, they have to regenerate the digital signature. And this requires knowing the private key that we stored in an environment variable on the server. Now, back in our user module, when we generate the authentication token, we want to add this new property in the payload. So here's our payload. Let's add a new property. Is admin. We set this to this dot is admin. So this is the benefit of encapsulating this logic inside the user object. So there is a single place that we need to modify. Previously, we had this in two different places. And with this simple change, we had to remember to apply this change in two different places in the code. All right, so this is our new token. Now on the server, we need a new middleware function to check if the current user is an admin or not. So here in the middleware folder, I'm going to add a new file, admin.js. So here we set module that exports to a middleware function that takes a request, a response, and a reference to the next middleware function in the request processing pipeline. So here, we're assuming that this middleware function will be executed after our authorization middleware function. So our authorization middleware function sets request.user. So we can access that in this function. So if request.user.isAdmin, or let's say if they are not an admin, we're going to return response.status. We set the status to 403, which means forbidden. This is one of the areas that a lot of developers get wrong. So we have 401, which means unauthorized, and we have 403, which means forbidden. We use unauthorized when the user tries to access a protected resource, but they don't supply a valid JSON Web Token. So we give them a chance to retry and send a valid JSON Web Token. Now, if they send a valid JSON Web Token and they're still not allowed to access the target resource, that's when we use 403, which means forbidden, which means don't try again, you just can't access that resource. So back here, we set the status and send a message like access denied. Now, otherwise, if the user is admin, we'll pass control to the next middleware function, which is in this case, the route handler. Now we're going to apply this middleware function on one of our routes. So back to genres.js. Let's look at the delete method. So, okay, here's our delete method. We want to apply two middleware functions here. So we need to pass an array. The first one is auth, and the second one is admin. So these middleware functions will be executed in sequence. First auth. If the client sends a valid JSON web token, then we'll get to the second middleware function. If the user is an admin, then the third middleware function or route handler will be executed. Now we need to import this on the top. So const admin, we set this to require. Go to the middleware folder and load the admin module. Now let's test this.